Hello everyone, welcome to the video series on UFT automation. In this video, we'll learn more about object repositories. We have seen so far that while we record, UFT creates objects within the object repository, meaning it grabs those object properties and creates those objects within the object repository, and generates the script, and it kind of grabs the screenshots, puts it in the active screen, and it does all that when you record the activity. Here, for example, I have a standard script that we have been seeing this for quite a long time now in many videos. Let me go to the login screen and go to the active screen. So depending on where I am, so yeah, so it did capture the screenshot of the application, and this script got generated as I was recording. And let me go ahead and look at object repository, resources, object repository, and it captured okay under dialog, under the login screen. Okay, agent name and password, but we do have cancel, help, we have an image and all that on the same screen. Now let us dive a little deep into this object repository. Okay, the first thing is, which I believe I might have already mentioned this. Say for example, I'm on the login screen, so I have this object repository, and when I go to the make reservation, you actually see a totally different object repository. The objects are very different. If I go back to init, there's nothing in there. Exit, I have only flight reservation menu here. Login, have few objects here, and here I have few more test objects more. But you can tell from city to cities is definitely the flight reservation screen. Now, to begin with, UFT by default creates a separate action. So maintains a separate repository for every action. So every action has their own code and has its own repository, and that is referred to as local object repository. So this is local to the action. Now, it's local to the action, so nobody else can access this outside this action. If you go to login, that is different, but if you go to make reservation, it has its own objects, and that's local to that particular action. So that's local object repository. Then one other thing is, you cannot share it. It's every action has its own local object repository. That local object repository is not shareable. Okay. Now the other type of object repository is a shared repository, where you can share a repository across multiple applications. Across multiple test cases. Now, what is the shared repository? Why do we use shared repository? So far we have been using local repository, and it works just fine, right? We never had any issue with object repositories. With the local object repository. Then what's the advantage of having this shared repository? So shared repository, the biggest advantage that brings onto the table is that once you have this shared repository built, we'll talk about how we build a shared repository, but if we build one such repository that has all the objects of your application, say in case of our flight reservation, let's say it has every object from every screen. If you have one such object repository, then you can use it in every test case. That's the beauty of it. If there's any maintenance in the object repository, all you have to do is update at one location, you're done. Let's say tomorrow they change the name of this flight reservation, and if you had 20 different test cases, every test case will fail because its local repository will record this name flight reservation. But if we had a shared repository, all we have to do is update it within the shared repository and you're done. So that's the beauty of a shared repository. So let's look into a few things, little tools around this. Try to understand this object repository screen, and then we'll go back and look into the shared repository and how we build a shared repository, all those details. A quick tour on this object repository screen. There are quite a bit of buttons here. Let's see what they do or how they help us in working with object repositories. Say for example, for this, let me get the application ready. Let me go to the login screen. Oh, you know what? Let me log in and get into the reservation screen. So it's in the background. Okay. Okay, well, let's see what's the first this icon is. This, I believe, is used to associate object repositories. We'll talk about this later. That's, we'll talk about shared and then we'll get to this, okay? Next is Object Spy. We'll talk about that in a total separate video. Let's look at this action. It says locate in repository. So we want to find something in the repository, or let's skip that, go to here. This says highlight in application. Let's say I want to know where this is within the application. Again, for me, in order to work with this, I need to have the screen ready. I cannot let's say for example, if you don't have the application open, then it will not be able to help you. So if I click this, it will look at all the windows that are open in my system, and it'll go find based on the properties of this object. So the fly from object is part of flight reservation screen. So based on this, you look for this screen and then go find fly from within the screen. So I'll click again, and it's highlighting the whole thing because I had selected flight reservation. So let me go to insert order, click on this highlight in application, so it highlights that area there. So that's one thing. So we kind of skip this one, which says locate in a repository. Say for example, I want to know where this is in my repository. If that's your goal or trying to find, then what you do is click that button, and as you can see, it minimizes everything on your screen and it will bring your application to the foreground. Now click on the field that you want to locate within your repository. So it says that it is a win combo box fly from. That's already here. Let me try one more time, but this time I will pick an object that we don't have in our repository. Let's say I want to select this delete order. Clicked on the delete order. It says win button delete order. I do OK. Cannot locate the object in the object repository because we don't have the object. So if that's the case, we can do the plus icon to add it to our object repository. Do plus, click on delete. It says delete order. Got here. Now I can do this, locate in the repository. Now click on delete order. It took me there. Let me do it one more time. The ticket is selected here. I'm going to click here and click on delete order. It identifies it. Okay, it takes me to delete order. You might have hundreds of objects, and it would be easy this way to get to the object. But we just have handful, so it's kind of easy to locate it. If there are more than 100 or 200, then it'll be a long tree here. So that's how we do that. And this is define new test object. We'll again talk about that later. Add insight object to local. About these two we'll deal later. Update from application. Update from application is if the application has changed, meaning the object's descriptions have changed, and then you can use this. You can click on this, click on the button there or the object and do OK. Is not the same class as, I selected delete order, right? So I need to do update from application, click on the delete order, then it updates the properties. Let's say, for example, text. I deleted the text there, so I don't have text. I don't have, let's say, yeah, I don't have text. I'll remove this as well. So there are only a few properties here. If I do update from application, delete order, okay, then it grabs all those objects. So it kind of refreshes the properties of the object. Next, add. As you have seen, you can add objects to your repository. Let's say, for example, update order. So you can add individual objects to the object repository. Say, for example, I click plus, click on this here. I get reservation form, okay. And now I get an option because when I clicked on the screen at the title, it grabbed every object within the screen and says, hey, because there are more than one objects there, it's giving me a prompt, and it's up to me. We can control how many objects goes into our repository. If you do the third button, I normally do that, and you get every object from the screen is grabbed and brought into our repository. Or you can actually do the last selection here and hit the select button, and you can handpick the type of object that goes into your object repository. Say, for example, if you clear all, and let's say you want to bring in every button or every, let's say, win edit, that might be at the bottom here, image edit box. So I want to bring every edit box type into the screen, into our our repository. I'll do OK, and then OK. So now if you look at this, it brought total, tickets, price, order number, name, every text box on the screen. Now it's in our repository. So that's how you add using this icon, add repository. These menus allow you to do the same thing. These are just icons for the direct access. So like object, add new object to local. So it's the same thing as this. This, as the icon says, find and replace. You can do that. You can delete a specific object from your object repository if you don't need it. You can copy. You can, duplicate this. Say, for example, arrival time. Copy that and paste it. It's already there. Oh, I can do not within. I should be able to do within the same as well. Copy, paste. Bottom level objects cannot contain any shell objects. Okay, I'm gonna click arrival time, copy, go here, flight, paste it. So look at this, it put _2 in there because now it has two objects of same type, same properties, exactly the same. So it put _2. If I were to do again, copy, go here and paste it, I get 3 there. Okay, I'm gonna delete this, delete that as well. And this is the cut option, and you can paste it. The same thing, cut, the regular copy paste and cut paste thing. And then undo, and this is a compact view. Just click that. Oops, wrong. Cancel. Full view. Okay, object properties. So there are a few things that you can do within the object repository screen in terms of looking for a specific object within the application or within your object repository, and looking at the properties and all that. And one other thing I would like to talk about is file export local objects. So what that does is, if I do this, file export local objects, I can export that objects, I mean everything that you have within your action here, I mean to say within your object repository, in the local object repository, now gets exported here. I'll call it shared object repository, and this is our flight reservation screen, and it's within temp. Save it. And if I go to that location, this is the file, SOR screen.tsr. TSR is for a shared object repository. Now let me move this here. Now what else? Yeah, okay. So now that we kind of understand that every action has its own local object repository by default, and using the resource menu you can go to object repositories and access the object repository, I mean the local object repository of the action, and you can use these tools to add, look up and all little things and look at the properties. Okay, then that's it for this video. We will look at more into object repositories in the next video. Okay, thank you. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for watching.